Hi, AP students. We're going to solve the 2012 free response questions today. So if you didn't download the file, go ahead and the PDF, go ahead and look at number 1 here. Pause the screen real quick. Go ahead and try to solve it. And let's get started. All right, so for number 1 here, we are looking at, all right, what we've got to know is that Rankin Land is in a recession. And that recession is going to eventually, and I'll just draw things simply before we need them. Remember, our recession graph is going to look like this, and I won't label it. I don't think we need that graph for this particular part, okay? So anyway, but I have it to reference just in case I need to. So letter A is telling us, okay, we've got to draw a production possibilities curve. We know that it's going to look something like this. I'm going to label it food and clothing, as it tells me to do. And then I need to draw a dot on here that shows that we are in a recession. So I got to go anywhere inside that curve, and I got to label it A. Okay, so part A is all set there. Again, anywhere inside this arc, all right, would be acceptable. Assume the central bank pursues an expansionary policy. What open market operation are they going to choose? So B1, open market operations, the selling of securities. So they're going to buy securities. Buy means bigger. If you called those bonds, that's completely fine. All right, we're going to draw a money graph here. Our money graph is going to look like this. Interest rate, quantity, supply of money, demand for it. Here's our new supply of money. Interest rate goes down due to those buying the bonds. All right, assuming no change to the price level, what happens to the real interest rate? Okay, so our price level, remember, we have our equation here, our Fisher equation, and I turn that N to an A, or that H to an N. So I've got nominal minus expected equals real. All right, remember, expected is also price level. Okay, so expected is also price level there. So we are going to say that there is no change to the price level. So this is frozen. So minus, we'll just say 0. Doesn't really matter. Okay, equals our real. Okay, what happens to the real interest rate as a result of the expansionary monetary policy? Okay, the real interest rate is going to go down because this is going to show us our nominal, our money market graph is going to show us our nominal interest rate, okay, because we don't know the price level of the GDP stuff, right? With this graph over here, we don't know it. We don't even have to draw it. We don't know it, so that's why we called that 0. So our nominal, let's just say it was 5. So our real would equal 5. Well, now our nominal interest rate is 3, so now our real GDP has to be 3. We can use that equation to kind of walk us into the answer. So it's going to decrease in this particular case. All right. For part 4 there, what happens due to that interest rate? What happens to our real GDP in the short run? We're going to borrow more money, and our real GDP is going to increase due to borrowing more money. Okay, now you might be a little bit confused and say, well, when we increase that, that's going to increase our price level. Remember, we kind of froze that over here for number 3. The wording is assume no change to the price level. Okay, so for whatever reason, we're going to assume there's no change in that. It said that, but we also know that real GDP went up. Maybe our supply curve goes way flat, right? And where the supply doesn't do any, the supply stays flat. Remember, it's not, and we just move our demand, right? So if our supply stays here and we move our supply stays flat and we move our demand, well, if we move our demand here, our price level doesn't change, right? Maybe that's the situation. That's what they're trying to wrap your head around. All right, let's move on to number 2 here. Oh, sorry, we got to do part C. All right, so part C, number 1. Okay, it's asking us, what's going to happen to the current account deficit for Rankin Land? All right. So what we have, I set this up. All right, so I've got Rankin Land here, and I've got country X over here. It really doesn't give us one, but I set it up. All right, and I've got my current account, I've got my finance account. Right now, what we know is we had over here, right? We had our supply of money and our interest rates went down. Okay, so what do we know is going to happen if our interest rates go down? Well, we know that other countries, okay, are going to invest into our banks. Okay, I'm sorry, other way around. I apologize. We know that other countries are going to stop investing in our banks. So it's going to change where we're at here with our inflows and outflows. We also know that Rankin Land is going to invest in other banks. Okay, so we can draw that. That is one thing we know for sure. We're going to line up our X's. We know this. And then we got to flip them back over here, the inequality signs for Rankin Land. Sorry for that confusion there. Yeah, interest rates go down. So now we're not going to save money in our own banks. We're going to go invest it in other countries. That creates this spot right here. Exports, all right, are in this case increasing because it has to flip over here, right? We're sending all our money over there, so countries have to buy our stuff. So our current account should be increasing, all right? And our real GDP is increasing as well with that. And again, our real GDP, if you want to reference that graph, right, it would have been, since people are buying more of our stuff, we're going to shift that to the right. What's going to happen to the international value of the bearer solely due to the change in real GDP? Again, we're going to tie this interest rate in. The international value of the bearer here, which again is Rankin Land's currency, right? We're sending all of our money overseas. So we are supplying, that's Rankin Land, right? Okay, this is the value of the bearer. So we're going to put country X over the bearer quantity, all right? We're supplying more to other countries, okay, because we're going to go buy their currency and we're going to try to invest in their banks, okay? So our international value is going to decrease, okay? Kind of a lot thrown at you there, a whole lot of wording, very few graphs, a little bit tricky. Keep practicing, you're going to keep getting better. All right, going to number 2 here. We've got a banking sheet we've got to solve. I'm just going to kind of redraw this. I've got my assets here. And I've got my liabilities, and I'm going to reference this as we kind of go. So assets I've got required, 10,000. I've got excess. This is stuff that they're giving us. It's 5,000. And then our loans that we have out are 85,000. And our total liabilities are 100,000 over here. Remember, these got to equal all this. Okay, so anyway, that's where we start. Now, part A, it asks us what the reserve requirement is. Now, it gives us, in this case, our required reserves and our total liabilities, and 10,000 is 10% of 100,000. We should nail that. That should be easy. Part B, we're saying that we're going to withdraw 5,000 in cash. Okay, so change my colors here real quick. All right, so we're going to withdraw 5,000 in cash. All right, well, we still have loans of 85,000. Okay. Our required reserve changes because we only have 95,000. That changes to 9,500. All right. Now we got to do some math here. We got to make this equal 95,000. So now we know our excess is 500. Okay. So we know that. We're going to reference that as we kind of get through it. What's the initial effective withdrawal on the M1 measure of money supply? So this doesn't tell us our M1 measure of money supply necessarily, but we know M1 money supply is cash on hand. Well, if I withdraw cash immediately, M1 goes up by $5,000 in this particular case. That's part 2. Skip to part 1. Part 1 is that the reserves decrease by 5,000. Sorry, got ahead of myself. Part 3, as a result of the draw, what's the new value of excess reserves on the balance sheet of the bank? We've kind of already figured that out. I walked you through it. Hopefully you didn't fast forward too fast. Our new excess equals 500. All right. Assume the next day we withdraw. John withdraws more money from me, Tierra Bank, that exceeds the reserves. Assuming that there's no loans called in, meaning that no one makes any loan payments. What's going to happen? What does the bank have to do? They've got two options: borrow from another bank or the Federal Reserve. That's it. Okay, that's their only option. They got to get back above that 10%. Hope that's making sense. We've been practicing quite a bit, so if not, make sure you go back to the other videos and see where you are at. All right, part 3 here. We're asked first to draw an economy in long run equilibrium. So you should have something like this. Maybe I should show you the picture first. Sorry, I didn't show you number 2 either, did I? There's number 2. You can kind of check your work with it. Apologize. Here's number 3. Pause it, solve it real quick before we get to the solving. All right, so for number 3, it's asking us to draw a long run equilibrium. All right, and it asks us to label some things. So I got output 1, I got price level 1, and that is part A right there. Okay, so we are all set with part A. Now, part B, it says that we have an increase in exports from Anderson Land. So for whatever reason, we're going to have other countries buying our stuff. That's going to cause an increase in aggregate demand, right? And it asks us to label a new output and a new price level. And you've got part B done there. Now, we've got to go back to the problem here and say that assume, what's it say? Nominal wages are fixed. That means I can't make more money from one day to the next, 1 week to the next. Kind of a tricky little dirty trick that they pull on you. Remember our equation. Okay, so we've got our Fisher equation. Change that N to that H to an N. Nominal minus expected equals real. Okay. Our price level also has to do with like the inflation, right? That's our expected inflation. Well, nominal's frozen. So let's just freeze nominal at 10. Okay. Let's just say our expected inflation over here was 5. We're just making it up. So that makes our real inflation at price level 1, okay, 5. Again, I made up a number for nominal. We're going to freeze it anyway. Now, if we have our nominal wages frozen, we stay at 10, our expected inflation goes up to, let's say, 8. That makes our real inflation, make sure I word it correctly. Okay, our real wages in this case go up 2. All right. So what happens to real wages in terms of this particular thing? If nominal wages are frozen, right? That's the part of our equation. What's the impact of higher exports on real wages? Real wages are going to go down, okay? Because nominal wages have to adjust with real wages to give us an actual raise, okay? And again, you can plug any number in there for that nominal stuff. That's just kind of the way that I walk myself into the answer. All right, part D. As a result of the increase in exports, export-oriented industries and Anderson increased expenditures on new containers, ships, and equipment. What happened? What component of aggregate demand, okay, is changing? Well, remember, aggregate demand has 4 components. All right, we've got household consumption, we've got business investment, government spending, and then we got our imports and exports. Well, in this case, if we're buying new container ships and equipment, right? That's going to be a business investment. That is what they are. That is what they are trying to get you to realize, is that they're going to invest more. So that's business investment for part 1. And then part 2, what's the impact on the long run aggregate supply? You're going to want to say, in this case, since we are investing more in capital, we're meaning we can produce stuff faster and ship it faster, okay? Because shipping is part of the production process. It's going to increase in the long run, okay? Because we are investing in those ways to make us more efficient to produce stuff. Okay, hope that's making sense. Keep trying these out on a day-to-day basis, and we'll talk soon.